The Authorian Armada entered the solar system silently, their massive ships hidden behind the shadows of distant planets and moons, their cloaking technology undetected by Earth's primitive sensors at first. They had come from a distant galaxy, an ancient race known for their vast knowledge and ruthless conquests. They believed their superiority was unquestionable after centuries of subjugating countless worlds. Earth was just another stepping stone in their path. They had already mapped out every planet in the system and decided to strike without warning. Humanity remained unaware their civilization, mostly focused on the gradual expansion of space exploration. Humanity had sent out probes to the stars, but their true spacefaring technology had not yet reached the level of interstellar travel. Still, Earth had made advancements. Their space defense systems had been improving, and military forces had begun testing experimental space weapons in the event of any future threat. The first signs of the Authorians came when Earth's deep space observatories began picking up anomalies, strange signals that couldn't be explained, at first dismissed as background noise by most scientists. It wasn't until a group of engineers noticed unusual gravitational shifts in the orbits of several outer planets that alarms began to sound. The data showed large objects entering the system, objects too massive to be natural. As the Authorians moved closer, the military quickly mobilized. Though their response was disorganized at first, they had never faced a threat like this, not even close. Earth's leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. The primary concern was to assess the situation. Their best minds debated strategy. Some called for immediate retaliation, others suggested negotiation, but no one truly knew what they were facing. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Authorian flagship, Commander Vora stood before her vast array of screens, looking down at the tiny blue planet below Earth. She was a seasoned conqueror with centuries of experience. Her people had faced many races, but none had ever been a real challenge. She smirked as she watched the humans scramble in their primitive panic, their tiny fleets too small and too slow to pose any real threat. She ordered her ships to proceed with the invasion. The humans would fall like all the others before them. Back on Earth, as the news of the approaching alien fleet spread, panic began to rise. The military immediately began preparing its outdated defenses. The government called for calm, but no one was prepared for what was to come. In the chaos of the moment, Captain Juno Salazar, an up-and-coming officer within Earth's military space command, found herself thrust into a leadership position. She had always dreamed of this moment, but never expected it to come like this. With only limited information and no real battle experience, she had no choice but to act on instinct. Salazar stood before the Space Command's war room, a team of strategists and technicians all anxiously awaiting orders. She scanned the room, taking in the tense faces. All eyes turned to her, and in that instant she realized the weight of the moment. The human race was on the brink of its greatest test. She didn't hesitate. Activate the defense satellites and prepare the fleet for immediate launch, she said, her voice steady despite the rising panic in her chest. The room erupted into activity. As the countdown began, Salazar watched from the command center, her fingers gripped tightly on the edge of the table. Earth's fate was in her hands now, and she was determined to protect it no matter the cost. The Authorians advanced through space toward Earth, their fleet now visible to human sensors. Though their ships were far larger and more powerful, the humans still fought back with everything they had. Captain Juno Salazar stood in the command center watching as Earth's space defense satellites activated one by one. The first salvo of weapons fired into space was a mixture of old technology and experimental defense systems. No one knew if they would work or not, but there was no time to second-guess. Salazar's heart raced as the Authorian fleet loomed closer. The gravity of the situation began to sink in. Even as the alien ships loomed, she could see how massive they were, each one dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. Their shields glowed faintly like an impenetrable wall, but humanity's first strike found its mark. A missile fired from one of Earth's launch platforms hit an Authorian scout ship dead center. Its shield absorbed some of the impact, but the missile still pierced its hull and sent the ship into a spiraling tumble. The humans had drawn first blood. The Authorians had not expected this Earth's primitive technology to have any impact, But it did, and the shock spread quickly through the Authorian fleet. As the damage to the scout ship became apparent, they immediately activated their long-range weapons, opening fire on the defense satellites and human vessels still stationed in orbit over Earth. The battle had begun in earnest. Salazar's eyes widened as the explosions lit up the void of space. Earth's ships launched in defense, but they were small and fast, relying on surprise and agility more than brute force. They darted through the debris fields near Earth's moon, weaving between asteroids and wreckage from destroyed satellites, using the terrain to mask their movements. It was unconventional warfare, but it was their best hope of survival. The Authorians attempted to fire upon the maneuvering human ships, but the humans were faster and more unpredictable. Salazar gave orders to her fleet to move into position. They would strike the Authorians from an unexpected angle, using the moon as cover and coming up behind their attackers to fire from close range. It was a high-risk maneuver, but it was their only chance. As the human fleet surged forward with renewed determination, the Authorians appeared more confused than anything else. Their superior numbers didn't seem to be overwhelming the humans. As they had expected, the humans were adapting to the alien methods of combat far quicker than anyone had predicted. The first wave of Authorian destroyers came within firing range of Earth's ships, but before they could release their deadly blasts, a sudden surge of energy erupted from Earth's hidden weapons platforms. The humans had anticipated the Authorians' movements and launched a counterstrike directly at the approaching destroyers. The energy blast hit one of the Authorian ships directly. Its shields flickered and failed as the beam tore through its hull. The ship exploded into a brilliant fireball, disintegrating in the vacuum of space. The Authorians had underestimated the human ingenuity and their ability to surprise. On the Authorian flagship, Commander Vora watched in disbelief as the first of her fleet's ships fell to the humans. She snarled in frustration. She had expected an easy victory, but now the humans were proving difficult to defeat. They had fought back with creativity and resourcefulness, a deadly combination the Authorians were not accustomed to facing. She ordered her fleet to regroup and form new strategies, but deep down she could feel the unease creeping in. The Authorians had not planned for this kind of resistance. They had underestimated Earth and its defenders. As the battle raged on, Captain Salazar's pulse quickened. Her crew was exhausted, but their resolve was unbreakable. They had shown the Authorians that humanity would not bow easily, and though the enemy was far superior in technology, the humans had something that the Authorians did not. They had the will to fight for their home. The Authorians were reeling from their unexpected losses. Their retreating ships regrouped in space above Earth, their commanders scrambling to come up with a new strategy. They had underestimated the humans, and that mistake had cost them dearly. Despite the overwhelming firepower and advanced technology they possessed, humanity was proving far more resourceful than they had anticipated. Captain Juno Salazar stood at the command center, her gaze fixed on the screens in front of her, watching as the remnants of the Authorian fleet pulled back, their ships now hovering in a defensive formation. Earth's forces had caused damage, but not enough to deliver a decisive blow. Yet humanity was not backing down. Salazar knew that this battle was only the beginning. She felt the weight of the decisions on her shoulders, the pressure mounting to ensure that Earth did not fall to the invaders. The news of humanity's unexpected success spread quickly across Earth's military and political circles. It was a small victory, but it was one that carried significant weight. The Authorians had been forced to retreat, something no one had thought possible. Just days earlier, military leaders across the globe celebrated the small triumph, but behind closed doors, there was no illusion about what would come next. The Authorians would return, and they would return with more force than ever. Earth's military leaders convened in an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps. They knew the Authorians would be regrouping and plotting their next move. They needed to strike first, and they needed to do it with everything they had. Humanity's weapons were advanced, but they were still far behind the Authorians in terms of raw power and numbers. Yet there was one thing the humans had that the Authorians did not fully understand: a deep well of determination and creativity. In the underground laboratories of the human military scientists were hard at work on something new, something that could shift the balance of power in their favor deep beneath Earth's surface. A team of engineers and physicists had been working on a revolutionary new weapon designed to harness an untapped energy source buried deep in the planet's crust. The project had been a top-secret one that had been developed over the years in anticipation of an event like this. The weapon was based on an energy core that could potentially channel and amplify the natural electromagnetic fields of Earth itself. The core was unstable and dangerous, but if perfected it could rival the Authorians' most advanced weaponry. Salazar was briefed on the project and understood its importance. She knew that this weapon could be humanity's last chance to turn the tide, but it was not without risk. The energy core was powerful but untested, and there was no guarantee it would work as planned, yet humanity had no other options. They had to push forward. As Earth's forces rallied to perfect the new weapon, Salazar and her team continued to press their advantage by launching small skirmishes against the Authorian fleet, using the asteroid belt as cover and forcing the invaders to waste precious resources on battles that yielded little in return for their grand designs. The Authorians were furious, but even they could not deny that the humans were not acting like the easy target they had thought they were in the beginning. Commander Vora began to question her orders. The humans were not acting with fear, they were acting with purpose and cunning, a combination that could prove deadly if left unchecked. As the days passed, the humans prepared for the next confrontation. They knew it would come soon. The Authorians were far from finished, and the time for a final stand was approaching. But they also knew they had one thing on their side, that the Authorians did not the will to survive. The Authorians had been silent for days, their fleet retreating further into space as they plotted their next move. But Captain Juno Salazar could sense that the storm was far from over. Earth's forces had not let their guard down despite the small victories and the hope that had emerged from their unexpected successes. The Authorians were regrouping, and the next clash was inevitable. Salazar stood on the bridge of her ship, eyes focused on the tactical display. The Authorian fleet was slowly repositioning itself, their massive ships still gleaming with menacing power, but they were no longer as confident as they had been before their earlier retreat. The Authorians were planning something bigger, and humanity had to be ready to meet them head-on. The final piece of Earth's last hope was nearing completion. The energy core, designed to harness the planet's electromagnetic fields, was now fully operational. Though still experimental, its power had the potential to shift the balance of the war, but it was untested, and its effectiveness against the Authorian technology was still unknown. Salazar had no choice but to trust in its capabilities. She gave the order to prepare the core for deployment. Meanwhile, the Authorians launched a devastating counteroffensive, their fleet descending on Earth once more, this time in full force, their ships massive and relentless. They opened fire without hesitation, unleashing an unholy barrage of plasma and energy beams that tore through the remnants of Earth's outer defenses. The satellites that had once given humanity a fighting chance were obliterated in moments, leaving the planet vulnerable to the coming onslaught. Salazar watched in grim silence as the first wave of Authorian ships breached Earth's outer atmosphere. The initial wave of human ships had already engaged the enemy, but they were no match for the overwhelming power of the Authorian fleet. The battle seemed lost from the start, but Earth's defenders refused to back down. They continued to fight fiercely even as their numbers dwindled. They used every trick, every maneuver they could think of to buy time for the final weapon to be deployed. In the midst of the chaos, Salazar received word that the energy core was ready for activation. The time had come to test the weapon. Humanity's survival rested on its success. She gave the order, and the core was deployed. The energy core was unleashed into the atmosphere, its power surging through the air, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse that cascaded out from Earth's surface. It was unlike anything the Authorians had ever seen before. Their advanced shields flickered and crackled as the pulse hammered against them, a direct hit to their systems that they had not prepared for. For the first time since the beginning of the invasion, the Authorians faltered. Their ships shook under the immense force of the pulse, their shields faltering, and their communications disrupted. Commander Vora stared in disbelief as her fleet staggered, their once flawless coordination now in disarray. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had cracked the Authorian defenses, and they had done it with ingenuity and raw willpower. Salazar watched in awe as the Authorians reeled from the attack, their once imposing fleet now struggling to regain its footing. Earth's forces took advantage of the moment, launching a full-scale counteroffensive, their ships attacking with renewed vigor. The Authorians had underestimated humanity, and it was proving to be their greatest mistake. But the Authorians were not finished. They regrouped quickly and launched their retaliatory strikes with even more ferocity than before. Salazar's fleet responded with every last ounce of strength. They had humanity was fighting for survival, and they would not let their home fall without a fight. The Authorians had been stunned by humanity's unexpected resistance, but they were quick to recover. Their fleet, regrouping and adapting to the new threat. Earth's forces had dealt a significant blow to their plans, but the Authorians were far from defeated. They had vast resources and a relentless drive to conquer this small world that had dared to defy them. Captain Juno Salazar stood at the command center, her mind racing as the tactical readouts flashed on the screen. She knew the Authorians would return with a vengeance, and that humanity's brief moment of success was nothing more than a temporary reprieve. The energy core had given them a powerful advantage, but it was still only a single weapon, and the Authorians had far more firepower than humanity could muster alone. Salazar knew that Earth's best hope was not just in fighting, but in finding allies. The Authorians were an ancient empire, and the galaxy was full of races that had suffered under their rule. Earth had only just begun to explore the stars, but they weren't the only ones watching the conflict unfold, and Salazar hoped that someone out there would take notice of humanity's defiance. The first signs of a potential alliance came from a mysterious signal intercepted by Earth's deep space listening posts. It was a coded transmission from a distant star system. The message was short and cryptic, but the meaning was clear. An alien race had been watching the war, and they had decided to offer their help. The message mentioned a group known only as the Orcs, a race that had long resisted the Authorian Empire. Their technology was not as advanced as the Authorians, but their expertise in guerrilla tactics and stealth warfare was unmatched. Salazar authorized a meeting with the Orcs. Their ships arrived in Earth's orbit under tight security. The humans were cautious but hopeful. They knew they couldn't defeat the Authorians alone, and if the Orcs were willing to share their knowledge, humanity could gain the upper hand. The Orcs ships were sleek and dark, their designs starkly different from the Authorian warships, and their presence alone seemed to unsettle the Authorians. Their arrival had not gone unnoticed, and soon the Authorians began to change their tactics, preparing for the possibility of a two-front war. Salazar met with the Orcs leaders aboard her flagship, their eyes hidden behind dark masks, and their voices low and deliberate. They spoke of their long struggle against the Authorians and their desire to see the Empire crumble. They agreed to lend humanity their technology in exchange for the promise of shared control over the Authorian territories once the war was won. With new allies and new strategies, Earth's forces began to prepare for the next phase of the war. They knew the Authorians would come in full force once more, but now they had a chance to turn the tide. The Orcs shared their stealth technology with the humans, allowing them to move undetected in enemy territory. They taught them the art of sabotage and subversion, striking at the heart of the Authorian supply lines. The Authorians had underestimated humanity's resolve and their capacity to adapt. Now they were facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Humanity had united and formed alliances with those who had long suffered at the hands of the Authorians, and together they were preparing to strike back with everything they had. The final battle was coming, and the humans were no longer just defending their home. They were preparing to take the fight to the Authorians and show them that no matter how many worlds they had conquered, there was one world that would not fall without a fight. The Authorians had been caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the Orcs, And the new alliance with humanity, their once unchallenged control over the galaxy, was slipping as they faced a coordinated assault that they had not anticipated. The Authorians had always believed themselves invincible. Their vast fleet and advanced technology had crushed countless civilizations, but the humans and their new allies were proving to be something entirely different. Captain Juno Salazar watched from the bridge of her flagship as Earth's forces and their Orcs allies prepared for their next strike against the Authorian Empire. The Authorians had expected to sweep through Earth with ease, but now they were fighting a war on multiple fronts as the Orcs launched hit-and-run attacks on Authorian supply lines and communications networks. Humanity's fleet had been upgraded with Orcs stealth technology, and they were beginning to infiltrate deeper into Authorian space than they had ever dared before. The Authorians had started to panic. Their ships no longer moved with the confidence they once had. Their attacks were less organized, and their strategies seemed to be faltering. They were not used to being outmaneuvered, and now they were facing an enemy that was taking the fight to their doorstep. Salazar knew that humanity's best chance of winning this war was to take the Authorians by surprise. They couldn't match their strength in numbers or technology, but they could outthink them and use their creativity and resourcefulness to disrupt the Authorians' plans. She ordered her fleet to launch a full-scale assault on one of the Authorians' primary warships, a massive dreadnought that had been responsible for the destruction of Earth's defenses. The battle began with humanity's forces moving in under the cover of Orcs stealth technology, their ships darting through space undetected as they approached the Authorian dreadnought. The Authorians were caught off guard as the human fleet emerged from the shadows and launched a barrage of missiles directly at the dreadnought's exposed weak points. The Authorians tried to retaliate, but they were too slow, their ships attempting to reposition, but the humans were already on the move, their tactics unpredictable and relentless. They struck hard and fast, hitting the Authorian ship in places where they had not anticipated an attack. The Authorians began to scramble their defenses, but the damage was done. Their massive dreadnought was crippled, its power core damaged, and its shields failing. The human fleet moved in for the kill, launching a final wave of missiles directly at the Authorian ship. The explosions rocked space as the dreadnought erupted in a massive fireball, disintegrating into debris. The Authorians had lost one of their most powerful vessels, and the shockwaves of their defeat reverberated through the rest of their fleet. On the Authorian flagship, Commander Vora seethed with rage as she watched the destruction of her ship. She had never faced an enemy like this before, one that refused to yield no matter the cost. Her people had been the dominant force in the galaxy for millennia, but now they were losing to a race that should have been beneath them. The humans had proven themselves capable of more than just survival. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and Vora knew that their determination was something she could not ignore. With the loss of the dreadnought, the Authorian fleet began to retreat, but Salazar knew this was only a temporary victory. They would regroup and return with greater force. But humanity had proven something to them. They had proven that they were not a race to be underestimated, and that they would fight to the very end. The Authorians had retreated, but not in defeat. They were merely regrouping and rebuilding their shattered fleet. With the loss of their dreadnought, they had become more cautious and less certain of their victory over Earth. Commander Vora knew that humanity had proven itself more than capable of taking the fight to them, and the Authorians would have to adapt if they wanted to claim this planet as their own. Captain Juno Salazar paced the bridge of her flagship as the aftermath of the battle unfolded on the screens around her. The victory had been a crucial one, but it was far from the end of the war. The Authorians were not finished yet, and they would not give up without a final push. Earth's forces had dealt a serious blow, but the Authorians still had overwhelming numbers and power. Salazar knew that humanity's survival depended on them making the next move. They couldn't afford to wait for the Authorians to strike again. Salazar called an emergency meeting with her senior officers. The room was filled with tension. Everyone knew the stakes. The Authorians would be back, and this time they would come in greater numbers with more firepower. Humanity's position was precarious despite the success of the Energy Core and the Orcs Alliance. There were still massive gaps in their resources and technology. They needed something more to ensure they could stand against the Authorians. Salazar looked at the faces around her and knew the hard truth: there was no one else to turn to. Earth had no allies left. The Orcs were skilled, but their technology was limited, and the human fleet, while brave and determined, was still far smaller than the Authorian Armada. They needed to find a way to tip the scales permanently before the Authorians returned to finish what they had started. In the weeks that followed, Earth's military worked tirelessly on new weapons and strategies. The Orcs shared more of their guerrilla tactics, while humanities scientists continued to refine the energy core, hoping to make it more effective in the field. Every available resource was put into the effort to stop the Authorians once and for all. Meanwhile, the Authorians had been silently gathering their strength, their fleet rebuilt and reinforced with new warships from their homeworld. Their commanders knew they couldn't afford another failure. The humans had demonstrated a capacity for creativity and adaptability that the Authorians had not expected, and their resolve had shaken the very foundation of the Authorian Empire. Vora was no longer certain this war would be as easy as they had once thought. On Earth, Salazar stood before a massive holographic map of the solar system. As the final phase of the human counteroffensive began to take shape, the Authorians would arrive soon, and Earth would not be able to withstand another full-scale invasion. They had to strike first. The plan was bold and dangerous, but it was their only chance to cripple the Authorians before they could regroup again. Salazar's plan called for a direct assault on the Authorian flagship itself. They would need to infiltrate the heart of the enemy fleet and destroy it before it could launch its full offensive against Earth. The Authorians had expected the humans to cower in fear after the loss of their first dreadnought, but now humanity was on the offensive. The Authorians would be forced to face them in a final showdown. As the battle plan was set into motion, Salazar stood at the command center watching as her forces prepared for the coming storm. She felt a deep sense of pride, but also a growing sense of fear. The stakes had never been higher, and there was no turning back now. The Authorians would either break, or they would fight until the very end, but humanity would be there to meet them no matter what. The final battle was upon them. As the Authorian fleet emerged from the darkness of space, Earth's defenses were ready, but their forces were stretched thin. The Authorians had rebuilt their fleet faster than anyone could have predicted, and now they were returning with a vengeance. Captain Juno Salazar stood on the bridge of her flagship, eyes locked on the massive display in front of her. The Authorian warships loomed large, but Earth's resolve was unshakable. Salazar knew this was the moment that would decide everything. The humans had fought hard to get to this point. They had lost ships, lost lives, and sacrificed everything to keep the Authorians from taking their world. Now it was time to strike back, to take the fight directly to the Authorians and end this war once and for all. The Authorian fleet approached in perfect formation, their ships massive and terrifying. But humanity had one advantage: the element of surprise. The plan was simple but deadly. They would infiltrate the heart of the Authorian Armada, using a combination of Orcs stealth technology and human ingenuity. They would get as close as possible to the Authorian flagship and unleash everything they had on it. Their goal was clear: to destroy the flagship and cripple the Authorian command structure, forcing the rest of the fleet to collapse without leadership. As Earth's ships moved into position, the Authorians remained unaware of the trap humanity was setting for them. Salazar felt the tension building within her as the seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity, but her crew was ready, their focus unwavering, as they closed the distance to the Authorian flagship. Then, without warning, Earth's forces emerged from the shadows and launched a full-scale assault on the Authorian flagship. Missiles and energy blasts tore through space toward the enemy. The Authorians scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Humanity's ships were already inside their defenses. The Orcs stealth technology had allowed them to get closer than anyone could have imagined, and now they were within striking distance. The Authorian flagship retaliated with brutal force, its weapons unleashed in a desperate bid to protect itself. But humanity's ships were too agile, too unpredictable. They weaved in and out of fire, dodging blasts with precision and striking back with everything they had. Earth's forces focused their attacks on the Authorian flagship's weak points, while the Orcs provided cover fire from the shadows. Commander Vora watched in shock as her flagship began to take damage. The once invincible ship was buckling under the pressure of the human assault. She couldn't believe what was happening. The humans had never been expected to fight so ruthlessly, and now they were breaking through her defenses. He ordered her fleet to launch a counterattack, but it was clear the Authorians were losing their grip. The Authorian fleet began to fracture without the flagship coordinating their movements. Their ships were disorganized and vulnerable. Earth's forces took advantage of the chaos and launched coordinated strikes on the rest of the Authorian fleet, taking down ship after ship. The tide of battle shifted in humanity's favor as the Authorians struggled to regain control. Salazar watched as the Authorian flagship finally crumpled under the combined force of humanity, and the Orokai, the once indomitable ship, exploded in a fiery inferno. Its destruction, signaling the collapse of Authorian command. With the flagship gone, the rest of the fleet faltered and humanity's forces continued to strike decisively. As the last Authorian ships retreated into the darkness of space, Earth's defenders stood victorious. The Authorians had been defeated, their empire shattered, and their invasion of Earth brought to an end. Salazar allowed herself a moment of relief, but the weight of the victory was not lost on her. Humanity had fought for its survival and had won against overwhelming odds. Earth was safe for now, but Salazar knew that the war had changed everything. Humanity was no longer a small and vulnerable species. They had shown the galaxy that they could stand against even the most powerful forces in the universe. And from this moment forward, the humans would be known as more than survivors. They would be known as warriors.